Hello and welcome to Top Story. The crisis in Pakistan has grabbed the spotlight from the tense situation on the Turkey-Iraq border. 100,000 Turkish troops are on standby for a possible strike against Kurdish separatists. They've used bases in northern Iraq to stage attacks that have killed at least 40 Turks in the past month. Facing a possible meltdown in Pakistan, the last thing Washington needs is more instability in Iraq. So when the Turkish Prime Minister visited the US this Monday, President George W. Bush pulled out all the stops. He told Recep Tayyip Erdogan Turkey was a key NATO ally that could count on US support in its fight against terrorists. Bush announced a new partnership of the US, Turkey and Iraq to share intelligence on PKK separatists. But what happens next depends largely on the authorities in Iraqi Kurdistan, and many questions remain about their ability or willingness to resolve the crisis. I'm joined now by Dr. Walter Posch, a Turkey specialist at the EU Institute for Security Studies here in Paris. Dr. Posch, thank you very much for being with us again. Do you share the view that the key to resolving this crisis is in the hands of Iraqi Kurdish leaders?
No. The key to resolve the crisis is a political crisis, and it's in Turkey. It's about the Kurdish issue per se, it's about Kurdish nationalism. Breaking it down solely to the 3,000 combatants of the PKK is, in my view, the wrong approach. There is, however, a legitimate case to deal with these 3,000. Whether the key is in Iraq, I doubt it.
What could Turkey do in that case to calm things down if it's not in the hands of the Iraqi Kurdish leaders?
Well, one thing is obvious: the Turks don't go into Iraq. It's very difficult. It's difficult from the terrain, and the ordinary bill between how many Kurdish guerrilleros you have and how many troops you have to employ is simply to the disadvantage of to the Turks. You said it already, 100,000 Turkish troops amassed on the Iraqi border. That's for an invasion, if it's enough. But they are confronted by 3,000 small scattered groups. So if you want to solve with these groups militarily, you have to go for another kind of warfare, if you think that warfare is the real solution. Turkey is, of course, legitimate to save its borders, to prevent guerrilleros to infiltrate, or terrorists, how you call them. But at the same time, they are a symptom and not the root cause of the Kurdish consciousness inside Turkey.
Now, of course, Turkey has fought the PKK for many years, and the organization survived. So, in that case, what is Turkey hoping to achieve politically by putting this pressure on the United States?
Well, that's absolutely the point. The pressure is less on the United States, but there are two aims as seen from the Turkish military's point of view. First, it's the government of Erdogan. They never liked this government, they didn't like this president. And making a strong position on the national security issue is a very old trick of all militaries and all security agencies to show the government being weak. And to a big extent, the Turkish military has now managed to realign support from the street for their cause under the banner of national security. The second aim is Barzani himself. Barzani was living on a Turkish passport for almost a decade, and the Turkish generals still cannot stomach that he behaves now like a quasi-independent president of an de facto state.
Masoud Barzani, we should add, the president of the Kurdish Autonomous Region. Yeah. Now, he said that he won't hand over PKK militants to Turkey, but at the same time he says he won't tolerate violence in his region. It sounds like he's trying to have
that's a no statement. Yeah. I mean, not to tolerate violence in the region. Well, any government does do that.
But
and precisely the point, this is not the problem the Turks have. They have not a problem with violence inside the Iraqi territory. They have a problem with violence inside Turkey. So.
And what is that situation now inside Turkey in those eastern provinces?
There is a defect in terms of security. If you look at the pattern of attacks, it's quite interesting. There must If you lean back now and review the situation from February to now, then you see a clear pattern from different PKK-aligned groups, starting with attacks in Iran, groups fleeing over to Turkish territory, being chased out from Turkey to Iraq, and other groups working or fighting independently inside Turkey, like in Bingöl, like in Tunceli, which is quite far away from where the troops are amassed, and which is quite far away from where the Turkish military is concentrated. The interesting point is that these groups who are fighting still on behalf of the PKK, the so-called HPG, are actually dead-enders. The bigger part of the PKK follows the ceasefire, or not the ceasefire, the stop of the war. And these are all these groups, these sleeper groups, who are quite strong in the Turkish big cities. Just look at the recruitment pattern of the Turkish of the PKK. And most of them are still recruited inside the big cities of Turkey. So there is calm, there is anxiousness, and I think the only one who really could overcome this would be a real embrace of the Kurdish parliamentarians on behalf of the Turkish state. Something we don't see.
The Kurdish parliamentarians?
Yeah, the DTP people who are now under the banner of independence inside the parliament. They have been acting incredibly responsibly in the last crisis, tried their best to get out the 8 hostages, hostage-taken soldiers, tried their best to calm down the population, to be a constructive force in the parliament.
So ultimately you're saying all this is more a test for Turkey than it is for northern Iraq. That northern Iraq is a distraction in a sense from the domestic problems, the struggle between the military and the Islamist government.
It's the struggle between the military and the Turkish government. It's the question of what kind of Kemalism should be implemented, should exist. Of course, it's a distraction, and it's also a distraction from the fact that there is a reality now in northern Iraq, which is a Kurdish entity, which the Turks never liked, which so many, actually the majority, even of the security establishment, would say, well, we have to get along with them one point or the other. Now, let's bring the Americans into this picture. Here, the most important point is that what Bush is now suggesting on intelligence sharing, this is what the Turks already got from the Iranians and from the Syrians over the decade.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll have to leave it there this time. Thank you, Walter Posch from the EU Institute of Security Studies here in Paris. Do join me at the same time tomorrow for another edition of Top Story.